And good afternoon. It is Thursday, May 7th, just a little bit after 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is the ArcGIS Pro editing seminar. I'm glad everybody's here. Good afternoon to all. We were just discussing some of the changes that have happened since we first started doing this back in April. And I'm glad all of you got here. We had mentioned that one of the things we did have to do was we had to close the registration. Last month, we were putting open registrations right on our front page. So basically, we were leaving the door open. Anybody want to come here, they could come here. Unfortunately, in a couple of these sessions, we've had people just sort of what's commonly referred to as Zoom bombing, just sort of coming in, sitting there, not identifying themselves or anything. And we wanted to restrict that only because we want to make sure that we have people here that are paying attention to what we're doing. So we had to restrict that, but I'm glad everybody got here. We're fine. Hopefully everybody, and I'm going to go and mute everybody except for Christopher, who's going to help moderate this. So hopefully everybody has some questions here. This seminar is focused on editing in ArcGIS Pro. What do you do? How do you start it? That sort of thing. So real quickly, let's just go through a couple of slides. And I call out Fairview Industries, which is Nancy von Meyer. Nancy and I sort of came up with this concept, and we've been doing it, and I still like to call her out here. She's a dear friend for a long time, and I don't see her here yet, but I know she's got some other things she's dealing with right now. So I'm thankful for Nancy and her friendship and helping us with this. I'm not even going to go about this. Let's talk about the interface. Make sure that you're all comfortable with it. On here, if you've got a webcam, up on top you can see who's talking or who's active or anybody, and you can control those that way. As you move over against it, up at the very top here, you'll see up here, you will see the number of people who are here. So you'll see a list of everybody that's in here. The next one over is the chat window. And we're going to use the chat window here to communicate back and forth between one another. So if you have a question or if you have a comment, please put it in the chat window to everyone. And again, that's down here. You tell it who you want it to go to. Put it there. Christopher, who is you also see him on the webcam. Chris is with Panda. He's going to be moderating. He's going to be tracking that, and he'll be going and putting forth all of those questions and comments that you might have on here. Finally, if you're having any issues with your audio or video or camera, over at the settings icon is where you actually set those all up. And again, just sort of remind everybody, our goal is to make this an interactive learning experience. This is not meant to be a webinar. It's a couple slides, that's all it is. And we want this to be an event. We don't want you to sit there and just listen to me. We want to be responsive. Want to make sure that you're getting your questions answered. All right, and let's have at it. So, one more thing. These notices, again, it's important. I'm sending these notices out. Please make sure that if you know someone who wants to do this and wants to become part of it and get the actual invitations, you're going to have to do them through this newsletter. So you'll have to subscribe, and you can update or unsubscribe from that list at the very bottom of the newsletter. You can do that, and we've already had a couple people do that, only because they saw what they needed and they were done. But again, also you might go and look at the different seminar series that we have going on. All right, I'm done there. All right, so the main theme for today is just sort of starting off with editing. How do you edit inside of Pro? Previously, we've gone over some of the settings that you might need, the interface that's on here. We showed a couple tips and tricks, and we went through those. Hopefully, you've got some questions or some things you would like to have addressed during this seminar. And please put them in the chat window, and we'll take care of them. We'll make sure that they fit into overall the content of what we're teaching. But you'll see here now that I've got a sort of sample ArcGIS Pro project, and in there I've got some sample polygon feature classes that I've gone and symbolized. I've also got a line feature class that I'm going to symbolize soon, to sort of show you how you can track where the ends of the lines are, which become critical often when you're trying to do editing. And we also demonstrated how to go and put vertices on the polygon edges. Real quickly, I'll go through here and note that when I click on the symbology of a single feature class here, there's the gallery, and then there's the properties. Underneath the properties, there's three separate components. There is the standard generalized symbol. There's the various layers in a multi-layer symbology. And then there are the properties that you can actually add to the structure. So in order to go and symbolize the vertices, what you have to do is you have to add to the layer structure a marker layer. When you add that marker layer, you can then go back to the layers and symbolize how you want it to be. And I'm gonna go in and take this one off, by the way. What you can do, and the critical part here is not just the color on here or the size of it, but as we go down, it's the placement, the marker placement. Where is that marker going to be? And we're going to tell it that on this polygon, we want it to be on every vertex, and that it will go and place that on every single vertices that we have inside of here. All right, so that's how we did the symbology for the polygons, to make it easier to see where these ends and where these individual vertices on the polygons are. We're going to do the same thing to the lines right now, because to show you that there is a difference here. So on the COGO here, again, I want to go to my structure, and I want to go and add a marker on here. Then I want to go to my layers and symbolize that marker. And I'm going to go and make this red. I'll make it 5 points, and I'm going to scroll down here. Now with lines, when I go to the marker placement for lines, there's other options. There's along the line, at random places, at the extremities, and on the vertices. Those two are critical for lines. All right. So Eric is asking, Eric, are you still having problems with your audio? Can everybody else hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Eric, you may go and check over on your audio to make sure it's coming through there. So on these marker placements, if you just put it on the vertices, it only puts it on the intermediate vertices, not the ends of the lines. Instead, if you want to mark the end of the line, you have to put it on the extremities to go and have it applied to that. All right, and then you will see there's the extremities in there. So how do we start? Within ArcGIS Pro, in order to begin editing something, there is a separate pane called a Create Features pane. And this was sort of following what happened in ArcMap. And on there, you've got edit templates. We've got edit templates, and those edit templates will allow you to go and choose what tool you're going to be using. And on this feature template, I have just regular line features. I've got 2-point line features, or what we commonly call COGO features. And then I also have trace tools available to me. So as I click on a template, it will show me all the tools available to me that I can utilize. All right. So on here, I can click on the 2-point tool, start it, and it actually gives me, I can do straight lines, I can do right angle lines, I can do curves, and I have multiple options on what I do with the curves together with sketching proportionally. So right now, I'm just going to go in and let's go back here to straight line and draw a straight line on here and be done with it. And again, I wanted to show you that this is now putting up symbols on here to go and show me where the endpoints of the lines are. That's not in there by default. You actually have to symbolize it to show it that way. There's also another item on here in that since I am using 2-point lines, if I click over here to my template area and I click over here, here's the default attribution that's on my lines. But more importantly, I have this item here. This item says, when you do a 2-point line, do you wish to continue that line on your next input, or do you want to not do it and just do one at a time? So if I uncheck this here, all right, and then go back to doing 2-point lines, notice it's no longer rubber banding. It is just inputting that there. So again, it is a toggle, but in order to find a toggle, you have to know that you go to your template and then identify it there. So now when I put that in, I will continue rubber banding on there. All right. And again, to get off of this, I can cancel this tool and get off of it to finish with that. All right. So let's talk about that. And that basically is just a standard creating a line on here. But what happens if I wish to use the standard types of constraints that I have in here? Maybe I wish to go perpendicular to a line or a certain bearing and distance. I can still right click. And these are all the same constraints that we had with ArcMap on here. All right. However, and this is 2.5, you'll notice there's another one here. There's one called Spiral Curve. With 2.5, they have introduced the ability to go and create the geometry of a 2-point curve. It doesn't necessarily store it as a 2-point curve, but it does store the attributes of it so that when it's doing calculations against it, it can calculate it and use those calculations, figure out exactly where it is. It sort of creates the geometry of a curve, but stores it as a circular curve instead. All right. So on here, there is things like direction and distance on here, in which I can put the horizontal or the bearing for those of us who use quadrant bearings. We also can put in the distance on here. Notice we have another one, which is the pitch. The pitch, which is really slope distance and slope direction on here. For most of us, we don't use that. I've not discovered yet how to turn that off though, because for most of us, for most of what we do, we never really use the slope. But of course, we're dealing with Florida, so it's mostly just flat here. So anyway, you can input that and put it in place there. My line feature class that I'm working with, by the way, is a COGO enabled line feature class. It has the COGO attribute fields on there, and when I used my direction, when I used my direction and distance on here, notice it actually went and stored those values for me, so that it is possible to do an entire traverse without going into the traverse tool. So just sort of, if I wanted to go 45 degrees north for a distance there, and note 45 degrees, there's the distance on there. One thing you do want to notice that that I hit return on that, and return immediately took whatever value was stored as the digitized up to that point text and stored it in there. So on this, on the direction and distance, you want to tab between these values here.
Frank, Dennis wants to know, so pitch would be used for topo maps and 3D rendering,
Yeah,
topology maps.
yeah. So if in fact you've got something in there, again, because recognize that ArcGIS Pro is now three-dimensional. So you might be able to go and you might be looking to go and build something along a specific pitch, or you might have a line that starts at one elevation and ends at another elevation. You could go in and draw it out that way. Again, ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro is 3D enabled. Matter of fact, if we look at the data sets that I'm working with, all right, and of course I've hidden that. Let's go back here, go to here, and show the shape field on here. We might as well show all these fields on here. Oh, I can't save this. So I have to go and save these edits first before I can save my changes. All right. So now on here, you will see that this shape field is actually 3D enabled. It's the polyline plus these values in here. So for the most part, ArcGIS Pro is looking to use 3 dimensions with what you're editing. And you'll see that a lot of tools will have that 3D component built in there, the slope component, and some other elements in there. But you're right, Dennis, that's exactly what it is. All right. One of the things that was interesting to me is that I was doing some training recently, and one of my students, because we were inputting things into a traverse, and we were getting to some curves, and these are fairly complex curves. And he said, you know, Frank, one of the things that I've found is that rather than inputting it into the traverse, I go over to the sketch area and I use my circular curve elements inside of here. So I tell it, okay, here is my tangent bearing, and I think this override will work, maybe not, nope, it won't. So I can tell it, for example, what my tangent bearing or my chord bearing or my radial bearing is. I can tell it what the radius is on here. Let's say 300 feet. That's 300 feet with the radius on the right-hand side, so it's a positive value. And then I can tell it the central angle or whatever, and I can say 90 degrees. And he said, when I do that, I actually see it coming in here and oh, it's here, the right and the left. He said, I can actually see and visualize this thing. Whereas when I'm doing it in the traverse file, I can't do that. So that's a really nice tip that I hadn't even thought about. You know, how do you go and do this? And great example of using it in combination. And again, when you do this and go to the attributes, we actually see that it has recorded all of those values in there. So that using the line tool and using some of those constraints, again, some of these constraints here, you can actually go and have it begin populating some of the values in here if you're using COGO tools in here. All right. All right. Let's see. So we went over a little bit curves on here and how you can actually use information that might be on a legal description or on a survey or something like that and lay out a curve. We went over legal descriptions on here as far as bearings and distances and what that slope value actually means on here. Do we have any other questions with straight line editing? Again, we can see that we can do things such as we can go perpendicular to this, and this was all standard inside of, we can go right click and go parallel to here, but for a distance of, there it is, a distance of 50 feet. And then we can go back over here and go parallel for this to here. So you can use geometric construction to go and build these lines. It's not just bearings and distances. You can use the geometric construction and the constraint tools to go and do that. Last time we also went and covered the constraint tools themselves, showing where as we go and if we turn them on, it will give us the distance and the bearing for a specific line as it rubber sheets over there. Again, I personally don't like those and turn those off all the time. All right. Any questions on this? I'm next going to move into Traverse. Then I'm going to go and look at COGO. And once excuse me, well, then I'm going to go and move into polygon editing. Once we've done that, then we're going to start looking at tools to start modifying these things. All right, so think about what you might want to talk about on here. So I have gone and done lines. I'm going to be done with lines here. Let's go down here and use just the standard feature template for going and inputting points here. Again, same constraints are available to me. I can do everything from the delta XYZ, the DXDY, or to absolute XY, and actually input the actual value in there to do that.
Frank.
Yes, sir.
Sarah wants to know, is there a keyboard shortcut for the circular arc or a way to set one? That's a good question.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm not sure. There is a set of keyboard shortcuts up there. And I need to go and find that. Let's take a short little trip here. Up here's the keyboard shortcuts for navigation or for editing. So here's the navigation under redo, tables, formatting, selections, moving, scaling, rotating, editing vertices, creating anno, creating polygons. Keyboard shortcut. Creating arcs. There's an R for an arc. Creating a circle. No. Rectangle. I don't see them. I don't see them. I also don't see where there's a way that you can customize and create keyboard shortcuts yet. I do know that it's one of the things that we've asked them an awful lot. Give us a way to go and do keyboard shortcuts yet. They're still trying to figure out how to work that into the interface. But right now, here is the best place to go as far as figuring out what keyboard shortcuts are currently available and built into the core software. So unfortunately, no, there's not. So it's still just right click and go from there. All right, so let's go down here again. Circular curve. Again, you have this option to go and put that in. You can go and input the curve using these tools. Again, this pretty much works the same way that ArcMap did on there. And if I'm looking at my attribution here, I have nothing other than a name field in here. But again, because we are symbolizing, we put markers on the vertices, we can see where those vertices are. All right, let's do a couple more here. Again, I can go things such as parallel to that. I can do this. So again, a lot of it works the same as ArcMap. You still sort of have the same ability to go and do some customization, but not all of it yet. I can tell you that those of us that grew up being very keyboard centric, I miss some of the keyboard shortcuts. but I'm sort of learning that I still have to have a mouse and I have to use a mouse all the time. So just be aware that right now it's very mouse centric as far as the interface, and they're getting there. All right. So by the way, again, you can use all of your snapping options in here, including things like snapping to a tangent to a curve, midpoints, intersections, edges, vertices, endpoints, and to a point. So if I were to go in here and go back to create to my line, and if I were to go in here, I could create a line that goes from here, and notice it will tell me as I'm on the edge, there's my midpoint of my curve, there's the tangent point of my curve. So if I have a curve here, I have several options as far as what I'm going to snap to. Again, there's the endpoint, there is the midpoint of my curve, and there's the tangent point to my curve on here. Any questions yet on anything? All right, so Create, again, works pretty much the same as ArcMap feature templates did. And you should become familiar, and by now you should be very familiar with a feature template and what it's for and how to use it. So let's talk about modifying this thing, because you have one set of panes which deals with creating things, and then you have another set of panes which deals with modifying things. And the modify the pane tool allows you to really sort of look into and take something that you've already created and change it. And they've broken it up into various groups. You have an alignment group, which deals with moving and rotating and scaling. And then there's a reshape, allows you to reshape whatever you've got that's existing. There's a divide group. There's a construct group. And then the COGO group, validate topology group, and topographic group. Notice what I don't have here is I don't have, for those of us that are parcel mappers, I don't have a parcel group because I don't have a parcel fabric in my project. So once I do, if I do have a parcel fabric in there, it will then also give me a parcel group on there. So let's look at some of these things. Let me go and take, let's go and unselect that by holding down the control key. And let's just go for move. And let's take a move and show you sort of the move option. The move works with your selected features. All right. And when you have it selected, it will show you this what used to be called the selection anchor, which right now is a yellow dot. And that's the area that's going to snap. So if I hold down my control key, all right, if I hold down my control key, I can move that dot. And then it will allow me to go and snap it and move the whole thing to a certain location. Notice it does not move it yet. When I let go of it, it doesn't automatically move it. I actually have to hit the plus sign to do that. All right. Rotate. It gives you again the selection anchor. And I'm going to hold down my control key and I'm going to hit the selection anchor. And I have to tell you, this interface really drove me crazy for a while because I would click off here thinking, oh, I'm going to be able to rotate it because that's the way ArcMap used to work. No, there's two places that you can click and rotate it. One is on this ring. The other one is on the selected feature. You can actually click it and rotate it around. Again, doesn't do anything until I click on there, until I click plus. So again, if I want to do this and have it go and rotate, there's also what's called a snap anchor, which is a secondary anchor that you can use. This first anchor was the rotate anchor. The second one, if I hit an S, it toggles. There it is here. It toggles. Oh, look at that. go and select just that one, do rotate, move that down to here. And my second one is an S, which all right, I'm going to move it here. I'm going to toggle it, hold down my control key, and move that to here. And then I'm going to be on top of I might make sure my cursor is on top of that thing. And as I move it around, I can see it snapping where that snap anchor is located. I can see it snapping to the other elements in here. And again, I have to hit finish before it will actually go and rotate that and finish it. All right, it's a little bit different than the way it was in ArcMap, but it is there. All right, scaling is the same sort of thing. You can click scaling. Here's my scale. It's going to scale around this. So I may want to go and move this down to here. And then I can take an anchor and scale it and click OK on there. All right. Those are sort of the primary type of alignments that you'll do. There's others. There is a transformation that occurs. So let me go in and take this, and I can transform that selection on here. All right. Now with a transformation, what you're going to do is you're going to create links and say, I want to go and say this point's going to go over here, and this point's going to go over here somewhere. And I have the ability to choose what type of transformation that occurs on that selected ones. An affine transformation, similarity, rubber sheeting, and such. It would be nice if we had the ability to go and see a preview of what the different effects that these four would have. And I've already made a suggestion to the edit team. Let's see if you can put preview in here, because they got preview on several other tools on here. But in this case, I'm just going to do an affine transformation. Affine transformation needs more than 3. All right, so I'm going to do a rubber sheeting and let it go in rubber sheet and transform it over there. Again, on there, and say, okay, that's it. Again, so that's a way to transform these elements in here. Aligned features. I was showing aligned features. Let me see here. Over here, I've shown aligned features before, in which it allows you to go and draw a path. And in this case, I'm going to draw a very wide path, 60 feet, because I know that's 50 feet from there. And I can actually draw a path and say, show me move all the vertices that are within this buffer that I just drew, that 60-foot buffer, and move them over to the path that I am drawing. And it will allow me to go and move them, and it says it's completed. Oh, there it is. Move them over onto here. It did not shorten this. I'm not sure why it didn't shorten that. But align features is actually very, very handy. Matter of fact, if we go down and look at this here, these are selectable. Let's see if we can do this here. Let's draw a new path that goes here to the purple, and let it go ahead and align that in there, and it will align those back up. Down here, we've got an issue like this. It will allow you to line those all up. But again, what it's really doing is just moving vertices on here. For those of us that were in the ArcMap parcel fabric, We know this used to be called transform parcels, where it just moves vertices, but this allows you to sort of, this also is sort of like the old zipper tool for anybody that remembers that tool. The zipper tool was actually very interesting. By the way, one of the things that's associated with the transform tool is it creates anchor points or links. Let me turn those off so I don't see them. Here's an interesting thing though. Where does it create those anchor points? Where does it create them? If I look at them, it's actually creating the anchor points in my default library here. I got another one here. There's links in here. There's my anchor points. And because this is set as my default geodatabase, that's where it's creating them. All right. Let's go back here to modify, and let's look at a couple other ways that we can modify things. So there is reshape. So, oh, one more thing. Let's go into a move too. I actually was going to use this one yesterday. I want to do a move to, and it will allow me to go and move things and changing the where it moves them, whether it's dx, dy, absolute, or whether I want to do a direction and distance. And I can tell it move this, 45 degrees northeast for a distance of 100 feet. It will take that and move it in that direction for 100 feet. All right. Okay, that's move to. So we've gone through all of these alignments. Reshape. Reshape, we now have edit vertices. Edit vertices has a toolbar now in which I can actually go and take and snap these vertices around. I can also go and insert a vertex here and do that. But again, notice nothing happens until I tell it okay. All right.
Frank.
Yes, sir.
Rod wants to know, when aligning features, how do you set which feature is the aligner and which is the alignee?
You don't. Actually, it is the path that you draw, which is going to control what gets moved. Any vertices within that buffer of the path that you draw. And to sort of illustrate that, I can go back here and let me go to align features again. Sorry. I still have a 60-foot here, so it doesn't necessarily mean that all right. So what it does is, again, it takes any vertex that's located within that buffer, within that in this case the 60-foot buffer. It takes any of those vertices and moves them to the path that I drew. So it's not necessarily selection. Now there is an option here in that you can tell it, okay, do this with selections or without selections. But it doesn't matter if you do with or without. The point is, what the tool does is it moves the vertices to the path. So when I click in here, it goes and moves them to the path, is what it's doing. All right. Got it? Good. Good. I want to mess this up, but not that much. So, all right. So, I mean, it's interesting that you don't have to actually select the polygons or select what features should be moved. But it kind of does a reshape, and it uses that as the new edge on there, which is again, it's very interesting. So we come up to reshape. All right, let's look at reshape here. And again, this is the way the old tool used to work. You drew the new path. It took the geometry and reshaped it to that new geometry. And let me go and hit this again. There's my new geometry there. Similar to the replace geometry, in which you can go and do the same thing. It just depends on how you want to do that. But again, the reshape and the replace geometry, they'll do basically the same thing as it relates to changing those. Replace multi-patch. Multi-patch is actually a 3D polygon. I don't have any here. Continue feature. So let me go and select here. I have this. And I can say continue that feature. We draw it over here. I can tell it to continue it to there. Click OK. And it did it, but why didn't it? Maybe because that's a 2D or a COGO. Interesting. Well, okay. So it did go and continue that. I must have. Oh, yeah. So what's happening here? On this symbology, I actually have some scale set, it looks like, on here. So if I go back here and go to single symbol, it actually has on here some scale set that when it's beyond a certain or inside of a certain one, it won't let me draw it. I guess because I don't have that on here. Come on, let me draw this. Will it allow it to happen? Nope, it won't. Let me check one more thing here. My appearance. No scale. Yeah, it's interesting. I do have a scale setting here on the symbology. If I zoom in here, you'll see it over here in the table of contents. It changes slightly what's on there. Why it won't let me do that? Why it won't let me change that? I'm not going to spend any more time on that. But so that was continue feature that we did. Let's look at also here. Extend or trim. Extend or trim allows you to do some things. Inside of ArcMap, you had to go and select things to be able to go and extend or trim them. With ArcGIS Pro, you can do this without a selection. So as I move my cursor over something, it shows me what my options are for this. So in this case, I can click here, and this solid line means that it's going to go and extend it out all the way to the intersection there. All right. Wonder why this isn't. And this allows me to go and do it here. And here. So extend and trim will allow me to go and extend these. Once I get over the end of it, it will allow me to go and extend it on here. I actually like extended trim. And for those people that are doing editing inside of a parcel editor, you often will have to do extended trims to make sure that it gets to the edge and intersects with the boundary of a property. Fillet tool allows me to go in and select two lines, and then gives me the options as far as which of the 4 quarters this is. In this case, I want to do it here, and it automatically goes and trims it.
Frank, in regards to the extend and trim, Victoria wants to know, extend to the intersection of 2 lines, not to a grid.
Yes. Yes. I don't know if you can extend it to a grid. I've never tried doing that. I've never, as far as my workflow, I don't see that very often, but it will allow, it does allow you to extend it to the intersection. Yep. I just did it to a grid. Actually, this is not a grid. These are polygons that are in here. Is that what you were saying? The purple lines, those are polygons over here that I was extending it to. So it's not just two lines, it's extending it to anything that it will do. So if I go in and take this and I go and I split this here, all right, and let's just go and take this single one and delete it, all right. And then I could go in here and say, and again, just to make sure that we can see this, that is a polygon feature class. There's a single polygon that it's actually on. So it's not necessarily a grid, it's just a polygon that's that it's extending it to. So I can now extend it, and note to here it's extending it to there. I cannot extend it past that. If I were to turn off okay. So if I were to go and do this, it would extend it out to the next thing that it would intersect. All right. There it is there. I go in here, and again, this is set on, it's got a strange setting on it. All right. Okay, so that is fillet also we went over. And again, with fillet, you can input a fixed, and you can go over here and you click on the 2 lines and do it, and it automatically will go and trim it up. So by the way, if you have COGO on those lines, and let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and select these 2 lines, and this line is 585, and this line is 650. All right. I'm on auto apply here, so they're automatically on there. Let's go here to the labels and do a label class here. And say, what are we going to do here? Let's display Let's make sure we're on the right one. Create a new label class. Why don't I see those other? Wow, that's interesting. I don't see these. Nothing label features in this class. It's really acting strange. I don't even see those oh, that's the links. Duh. That class. There we go. Sorry. The joys of doing unscripted demos. All right, so here we see this line is 650. In here, 650. The question is, why does this black and this red? Because this one does not have a bearing on it. Once we put a bearing on it, it will show that, in fact, that those are valid COGO values on there. They may not be real, but they're valid COGO values on there. That's the difference between a red label, red distance label, and not. So let me go back here now and now do a fillet. 200 foot. This one and this one. Have it go and put in there. And again, it recalculated the distances if they had COGO values on them. All right. All right. Generalize line intersections. Line intersections has received a lot of work here in the last. I'm trying to find something that I've got that can intersect on here. I can't find one. So if I go to line intersection, create a new line where we're intersecting, I can go here and intersect here, and it can go and create those new lines on there for me. All right. And I have two different lines in there for it. All right. I'm now through alignment and reshape. What else can we talk about on here? I can keep going through this, but I'd rather give you an option to go and give me some feedback. What is it that you want to see on here? What can I show you to help you a little bit more with this? Do you want to see some of these construction tools for dividing and buffering and such? Or is there something specific that you'd like to go and see? Will the line intersection also just extend the two lines till they meet? That actually is the extend tool, but you can, in fact, let's see if we can do that here. So if we can extend this without here, on here, let's go and look one other place here, to the intersection of two. So let me go in select these two and delete it. Let's go and create a new one here. And extend and trim. There is, where was there? There's an option in here. There is this and this to here. And if I tell it, don't create those, just go and extend those lines out. All right. So let's go in and display it. Shana, you got that? Okay. And okay. All right. I'm actually reading the chat window too, Christopher. So
Okay.
Rod is saying he's got accurate parcel features and some older digitized zoning features. All right, let's sort of go through a scenario where we have that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my sample polygons, and I will go and symbolize them a little bit differently so that we can utilize these. All right, and I go in here and I'm going to create, I'm going to hold down my shift key so none of this is. All right, so I have, and let's go in here and do one more thing here. Let's go to the properties here and set it so that interior colors a little bit more. We can also set that by setting transparency over under the appearance if we want. All right, so I have a zoning layer here. All right, using this scenario, I have a zoning layer and I've got my accurate parcel layers underneath there, and I wish to go and make my zoning to become coincident with my parcels. There's a whole lot of ways that we can do this, a whole lot of different options on here. If we're going to be careful, one of the things we can do is we can go back here and use the, we can go back here and use the Align Features tool. All right, we go ahead and do that. And again, the options are, go ahead and say Align Features, tell it what that is, draw our path and say here. We could trace this one, or we can just say that, make sure that this is, you know, far enough out that you get it. Get these vertices in here and say go ahead and align them. That's one option on here. And I say if we're going to be careful with it, we want to make sure that whatever path we go and draw in there, that's going to be coincident with the accurate parcels. Well, there's a way to make sure that those accurate parcels don't move, because we can go to these accurate parcels and just say, don't edit these right now. And now I can't move those parcels, but I can use those as references for when I go and realign all of my zoning layers. One option. A second option is to go and utilize a different tool. Now again, I personally like the Align Features tool, but there's other options in here. If I go in right now and say I want to deal with map topology, suddenly I get another option here called the Align Edge tool. The Align Edge tool goes and utilizes map topology on here. So if I click on Align Edge, it shows me all of my edges and all the intersections of map topology on here. And with Align Edge tool, and by the way, this is very powerful. If I remember correctly, the solid line moves to the dashed line. I might be wrong, but the solid line moves to the dashed line, correct? so that now I go here, the solid line moves to the dashed line. The solid line moves to the dashed line. Solid line moves to the dashed line. So with that, you don't actually have to go and draw the individual path to do that, but you're using the map topology. Again, you want to be very careful about that map topology. You want to make sure that you're moving it in the right direction. Having done this previously with other projects, you want to be careful because it can also, when it's rechanging those edges, it could also make polygons disappear if you're doing into areas where it just doesn't work right on here. But going through here, you can see how absolutely powerful this thing is. These are polygons in here. I go in here and say, just take this one and move it completely against there. All right. It's a nice tool, but it is very, very powerful. So,
Victoria and Kelly want to know what happens to the vertices involved.
Look at them. What's it actually doing to those vertices in here? And again, let me turn this thing off so we can get out of here. I'll go to something else and unselect this. So what happened to those vertices? All those vertices really did is they moved to that intersection, similar to what Align Features does. It just moves vertices. It doesn't really reshape that polygon. Now, and this is a really good question. So maybe, and I can take this down much less than I did before. But if I now go back here and say, well, let us go along here and do this. Oh, I can turn that off. I don't need that now. What happens with the vertices when I use the Align Features tool? If in fact there's a straight collinear line, if it's a straight line, or if there's, it's the easiest way to describe this, it takes whatever path is there and replaces that path with the new one that you just drew. So if I had gone in here and I said, okay, well, let's go and put 1 point there, 1 point there, 1 point there, what's going to happen, it will replace this vertex, but put a new one there. It's replacing the old vertices of that boundary with the one that I give it. So here, oh, why didn't it replace that? I'm not sure why it didn't replace that on there. Huh. I don't remember what that actually looked like beforehand, but it's replacing that edge. So it's getting rid of vertices. Now, that's important when, for example, you're dealing with densified curves. All right. So let's go and create a polygon and let's approximate a densified curve on here. If I go in here to Align Features again and draw this, it's going to take whatever I draw and replace those vertices with the ones that I drew. So it will go and, again, it's kind of like a reshape. You tell it what that new shape is, and it will align anything that's editable inside that buffer through all the layers that you have turned on with that new alignment, with that new sort of reshape. All right. So again, things like, why would I use this? I would use this maybe to go and correct this difference in the alignment between these sections and the purple sections on there also. Go ahead and reshape them on there. All right. So what other questions do we have with this? I mean, this is very, very powerful stuff here that they've got built into this. Lucas says, believe the line features will remove the vertices along straight lines. It will. I don't know why it didn't do this one. I'm not quite sure about that. Lucas.
Joe wants to know, does that update COGO and ANO information?
No. No. So let's draw a line here. Let's prove that. And I don't know why this silly. So let's get these. Let's put some COGO attribution on this. Oh, how can we go and update the COGO attribution on here? There's a tool called Update COGO, which will take your selection, your selected lines only, and create the COGO attributes for them. All right. So there's your COGO attribution. So now if we go and do an align features on here, using the straight line through here, let's make this large enough so it gets all of those. All right. And modify them. Let's redraw this. Let's look at the attributes. It did not update COGO because remember those had angles on them. They did not get updated at all. To prove that, let's go back to update COGO. There's the old stuff. And when we click update, there's the new stuff. So Joe, it did not do that. All right. Just sort of so it's sort of like moving it around, but it's not going to recalculate those in and of themselves. They're thinking about you might be able to go and set up a rule if you wanted that to happen, but it doesn't automatically do it. Again, think of the align features as sort of a way to just move vertices and replace the geometry, but it's if you have sufficient vertices, it just moves them. But if you have a curve, for example, it will completely replace that geometry on there for it. All right. Again, I can tell you that we have been fascinated by some of these tools in here for aligned features and stuff. It's pretty amazing what it really does. So let's go in here again and say, let's try this. All right. It will completely realign those to that. All right. So Mark is asking, if the COGO does not update, would that cause issues? We try to adjust once it was available. If we try to adjust it. Mark, it depends upon what type of adjustments you're trying to do on it. If you're trying to do an adjustment, which is depending upon the COGO values that are stored, yes, it would. Now that COGO adjustment basically is what's commonly called a least squares adjustment, because it uses the attribution of the lines for the adjustments rather than using the positions of the lines. So yes, it would be problematic with a least squares adjustment. But at the same time, a lot of ArcMap people had issues with that anyway, because they had people go and doing migrations into the ArcMap parcel fabric, and it retained the original ArcMap COGO attributes, which were just way off. They might have had a line that originally was a 500-foot line that had been split in two, and it still said 500 feet on those two lines, because in ArcMap, there was a setting whether or not you updated the COGO. And then when they pulled them into the ArcMap parcel fabric, because the ArcMap parcel fabric uses those COGOs things, it would cause them problems when they'd go to try to go and construct something from those parcels. So yeah, you just want to sort of recognize that there's issues one way or the other with those. All right. You notice it also maintained the vertices this time to maintain the COGO attributes. Yeah, it really wasn't reshaping these because they could fit within that same. If I were to go and make that a curve, let's do that. If I go in here, I'm in Align Features. Let's go and say, let's take this and let's make that a curve instead. All right. So what happened with the COGO attributes? They still think they're straight lines on there. It changed them, changed the geometry of those, but they still think that they are straight lines until I update the COGO on them. You know, once I go in here and say, okay, well, let's go back here again.
Dennis wants to know, is it possible to write a bit of code that will update the COGO after the alignment?
It is possible to go and write it is possible. So let me go and give you a hint of where you might be looking for it. Inside of here, inside of COGO, there is in fact this is the arcade labeling expression for deriving the COGO attributes from a line feature class. And this is arcade. So what it does is it goes and determines, it goes and takes the line shape. And then it goes and here's a whole bunch of variables in here that are set for this. But then it goes, for example, it calculates the azimuths and it calculates the bearing. Here's where it calculates the bearing on there. Here it is. Whether it's valid COGO or not, it goes and that's what gives you the different colors on here. It's partial, then it gives you a color. Here's where it actually calculates the bearing on here. Nope, that's still the string, radius string, curve parameters. So it's actually showing what those curves are, all right, on the values. So this is a good place where you might start to look at it. Again, it is this is the arcade expression that's being utilized to go and calculate those values when you have lines, and so it goes and displays them. All right. So that might be a good place. So conceivably, you could do that. Yeah, you could do that to go in and utilize that. All right. As Joe says, typically you would try to keep the record information if in fact it was ever derived record information. Interestingly, and maybe next week, Joe, you can bring this up again during the parcel fabric. Within the parcel fabric, there's not just the typical COGO attribution rules on there, or COGO attribution fields on there, but there's also a COGO type field, which describes whether or not the COGO values that are stored, whether they were input, whether they were computed, or whether they were inversed. Brian, what was the actual, do you know what the actual terminology was? Do you remember off the top of your head? Next week we can talk about that more if it's possible. All right. Yeah, so again, this is just standard COGO attribution. It's got nothing in there to figure out how it was derived or anything. But on the parcel fabric, it has an attribute field on there which says how it was derived. You can mark it initially, and then when it does operations like clips and stuff, it tells you whether or not the the values are residual values after something that was computed, or whether that was the original deed value that was input in there. It does have some interesting components to it. All right. All right. So we're 4:15 Eastern time. What else would you like to talk about or look at here on here? I can tell you that this is one that I found very interesting. Let me go back here so that I can actually pull some of these up and make them here and here. Let's get, oh, here's something I still find troublesome. Because I'm still on the update COGO field, it will not allow me to select anything until I leave this pane. Then I can go in here and go to selection and say, okay, let's select this polygon for me here. All right. So here's something that's interesting. Thank you, Brian. Brian just told me that the options on the parcel fabric COGO type field is entered, meaning it came from the deed, from geometry, meaning it was inversed, or computed, meaning that it's derived by some operation that it did. It was computed because of doing a clip or something of that sort. All right. Thank you, Brian. All right. So here's another tool, another editing tool here, which I find very, very interesting. And that's the divide tool. The divide tool it works differently depending upon whether you have lines selected or whether you have a polygon selected on here. So again, this is now a polygon that I have selected. So I can tell it that I want to use this edge to go and derive these from. And I can proportionally divide this polygon into however many options I want. I can do a proportional area. I can do an equal area, do it into, in this case, I have square feet, 300 acres. Nope. 30 acres. That's a quarter. So I could do it 10 acres, and I could say one of them, two of them, three of them, and then I can distribute it proportionally between them or not. It's the way to do divisions. I can also say equal widths. So if I have a block here and I wish to go and divide this into 50 foot, no, not 50 feet, 200 foot, I can tell it how many divisions I can make on this, and split a block into there. Again, I can merge the last together, or I can leave it as a remaining. This is a very nice tool. Especially if you're building a subdivision, you go and you put the rights of way in, you wind up with the block areas, you can then go and divide those. If they're old central business district type of subdivisions, where it's all 15 or 25 foot lots, you can go and utilize this to go and do that. And then again, you have to show preview. You can say, go ahead and divide that up, and it will divide it all up into those. The divide tool, however, is, let's go and just have that one line here, and I only want to choose that one line. When I have a line, I can, again, it's the same tool. It's a divide tool, but instead of being division of a polygon, this is now division of a line. I can tell it that I wish to go and take, in this case, this is 500. I want to take 100 feet off of it. All right. 100 feet off. And it will show me where that 100 foot is. Maybe I want to go 275 feet off. And it'll show me where that is. I can go from the start or the end of it. Unfortunately, the arrows don't change, but right now. So if you're an old ArcMap parcel fabric person, you can think this is kind of like the divide tool, or excuse me, the break line tool.
Break line.
Break line, thank you. Thank you. So there's dividing it by a single distance. All right. I can also go down here and say, well, equal distances. Maybe I want to do 75 feet, maybe 4 times. And I'll go in here, we'll go in and divide it up into, that's 3 times. It'll divide it 4 times into 75 feet. So it'll allow it to break it off there, all the same distance. Or I also have the option to go and say, okay, first it's 100 feet, and then it's 75 feet, and then it's 60 feet, and then it's 50 feet. And this is like the old break line tool. It will allow you to go put those derivations in here, show you how much is left, and allow you to proportion it if you want to. So that's a divide tool, applying it against either polygons or dividing lines up. There is some nice things in here. However, the things that you cannot do yet, against lines, you can't span lines. So you can't have 2 lines selected and say divide these both up, which is what the ArcMap parcel fabric used to be able to do. You can only do 1 line at a time on here. On polygons, all right, let's get off of this here. Let's go over and select this polygon here. All right. If I go to do a divide on the polygon here, right, maybe I want to do it into 2 parts. I have to go and tell it what line. Notice it's a straight line. They don't have, in essence, parallel offsets from curves yet. It is a tangent point to that line on here. All right. So there's still some elements here. And by the way, you can also go and draw a line, but it cannot be a curved line. It's a straight line that it's drawing each time. So there are limitations on what they've got here, but there's promise here that we can convince them to go and move some of this. Yes, sir.
Lucas says, according to Amir, they'll be implementing the ability to divide multiple lines at once.
Yes, correct. Amir has said that in the last meetup. However, there's, if you listen to it real closely, there are concerns that they only allow you to do it once. You can't do multiples, and it can only be off of a single line. So basically, it's using 1 single division, and then it allows you to go and divide off of that, but that's it. They still got a long way to go before they implemented the same sort of functionality as was in the ArcMap parcel fabric. But you're right, Lucas. There's movement towards doing this that they want to do, and that additional functionality. I'm actually testing 2.6 right now, 2.6 Alpha 4. I haven't seen it yet. So there's still they still haven't pulled the multiple polygons and edit those yet. So I mean, again, they're trying to do this as quickly as they can. They're putting as much as they can. They don't want to do too much at one time. They want to make sure it's all working before they do anything else. All right. So what else do we have here? What else could we talk about? In going through here, the explode is just exploding multi-parts. Platerize works the same as it used to do. Clip is really, really interesting, but I think it's more than a 5-minute discussion. Split is the interactive splitting. Or you can also split, you can take a polygon, for example. Take a polygon and then split it either interactively, which I go and draw a line. All right, and I do the split. Or I could go and select a feature if I have a polygon or something I want to go and split on top of it. And I have that over here where I have, here's my line. I want to go and do it by a feature. There's my target. Here's my input feature. All right, and it's this one here. All right, there's my target. There's some other things in here. I want to only select this one, and then I can split it. All right. Nice features, nice tools inside of here that we can utilize. So, for example, if you have a water feature that you want to go and split your parcel by those water features, you can go ahead and do that. The important thing to remember is that as it relates to these edit tools, they're applicable across anything, whether you're working in simple features like I am here, or whether you're working inside of a parcel fabric like I'll be doing next week. These tools work exactly the same. The only thing is if you have a fabric, they're enhanced somewhat, but this is the way they work now on here. All right, we're at almost 4:30. So what else? Give me your questions. Give me your questions. What else do you want to go on there? By the way, Brian just notified me. He just got notification that ArcGIS Pro 2.5.1 is now available. So we'll have to look at it and see and download it and see what's in there and what's fixed in there. So again, do we have something else that we want to talk about this time? See you next week. All right, so before I stop the recording, let me just mention that one of the things we are starting is we are starting a concept called open office. All right, just office hours. Where we get done with this, we're going to leave the meeting here, stop the recording, and for anybody that wants it, we're going to open up the mics. If anybody has any questions or anything, we'll be more than happy to stick around for a half hour or so to answer your questions and just generally talk about this stuff. Opinions back and forth. None of it is on a recording. It all just is let's just have a place where we can communicate back and forth right now.
We do have one question before we stop the recording.
Okay.
Can the sketches be saved to use later? That's a good question.
Sketches. That's an interesting concept because there really aren't sketches anymore. All right. It's interesting question because previously you had inside of ArcMap, you had this concept of a sketch, which was a temporary drawing. And while you can go and let me go and clear this out and go over here and let's go to draw something here. You can say that that's kind of a sketch. The reality is, even if you look, there's no symbology that replicates that sketch function at all. There really aren't sketches anymore. So that there's nothing that you can do to save this. Same thing with the lines. When you do a line, it really, literally, I just drew a line. I didn't draw a sketch anymore. I drew a line is what I did. So as far as sketches, you don't have them anymore. There is, however, inside the Traverse tool, if I go back over here to modify Traverse and I go and draw a Traverse here. On here, all right, I actually have the ability to take a Traverse file and export it out and import it out, but that's not really a sketch. So to answer your question, it kind of is that functionality, but only in the Traverse, not in the sketches anymore, only in the Traverse. By the way, notice I digitized these lines, these values, it doesn't really store them. It says that's a digitized value. We're not going to keep that because it's not a real COGO value. So anyway, thank you. Thank you all. Hopefully you heard or saw some interesting things here this week. Please make sure that when you come here, you always have questions. Next week, we're going to go into more of the Traverse tool, more of sort of some other constructions, but at the same time, I want this to be driven by you, not by me. I talked an awful lot today. I don't want to keep doing that. I want to get questions from you and see if we can figure out what do you need? What are you looking for? What are you looking to learn about? I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks for attending, and we hope you enjoyed this workshop. If you have questions, would like some more details about anything we discussed during this workshop, or if you or anyone at your organization would like information about training, support, or ways in which we can help you with your GIS needs, please contact me at frank@pandaconsulting.com or call me at 561-691-3277 and we can discuss how we can help you with your needs.